following is produced by RealAgriculture.com. Get real, get connected. We're joined right now on RealAgriculture.com by Kevin Bender. He is the president of the Western Canadian Wheat Growers Association. Welcome today, Kevin.
Thank you, Sean.
Kevin, the results are out for the CWB election. What was your impression of the election?
I guess it wasn't a huge surprise, but we were a little bit disappointed. We were happy that Henry Voss still got in. He probably most closely represents our views in terms of the wheat board monopoly. We would have liked to have seen, a few more directors elected that share our viewpoints.
So why do you think there wasn't more directors elected that share your viewpoint?
Couple reasons, I guess. One, quite a low voter turnout, which was disappointing. I think it was around 40%, give or take a little bit. The reasons for that, you can speculate. Some were fed up with the whole procedure. Some might have thought, oh, what's my vote going to matter, and not bothered. And another reason could have been the late harvest in Western Canada that just delayed things. And so there's probably a lot of ballots that are sitting in piles on farmers' desks that just didn't get opened. So probably a number of factors. But I guess what we're most disappointed in is the rules surrounding the election, voter eligibility particularly. We believe that those voting in the election should be those who solely depend on the farm for their income, or that's their primary source of income. Right now, there are a number of voters on the list who don't produce any grain or a very small quantity of grain that's not realistic for making a living off of.
But that's I do agree with that position that we do need to make those changes to the voting eligibility. But I know several people that do take obviously the farm is a huge part of their income, or is their income, and had just complete total apathy to the election. Why do you think? I have my feelings on it. What are your thoughts on why it seems that this election was completely boring and uninteresting for a lot of farmers?
Well, I think, as I stated, probably some just felt like, what's their vote going to matter? They think, oh, it's going to, if I vote, it's not going to change anything. And that's probably the way some of them felt. And they thought, oh, why bother with it? Some of them, I think, don't use the wheat board anyway. It's like, oh, it's irrelevant to me. I'm just not even going to bother. So I think probably there's a combination of both of those, amongst other factors, but those are the two that come to mind off the top of my head.
Yeah. Do you think that we have the people that are very pro board, we have the people that are very for choice, and then we have this group in the middle, and this group in the middle is just kind of living with the system and focusing more kind of what's happening on their own farms? Do you think that's kind of the case?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to that. And I think that group is bigger than what I believed. I was talking to one of the candidates in the election. He said that was sort of the audience that they were targeting, is the ones that were sort of in the middle. Because the ones on either side said there's not really little hope of changing any of their minds. It's the ones in the middle that sway a little bit. And, he believed that pool was, use that term loosely, the pool, but that group of people was probably about 50 to 60%. And I wouldn't have put it that high. I would have thought it was much smaller than that.
Yeah. So what happens next? You said that Henry Voss was elected. He's from northern Alberta, correct? We had obviously.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah, he is more of a pro-choice board member. We've got people like Stuart Wells elected, who's in my region, who would be definitely for the board having a single desk. So, what do you think happens next?
Well, I guess we're going to still, encourage the government to move forward with these changes to the electoral procedures so that they're in place for the next wheat board elections. They attempted to do that this year, but it was, didn't get through in time for before Parliament recessed for the summer, and so that it just never happened. So we were disappointed in that, but we hope that we can maybe get a head start on it this time and have those changes in place. I know we had support from most of the parties involved in the that were on the panel for deciding that. So even the wheat board was on board with the 40-ton minimum threshold. We had asked for a higher number. I think we were around 320 ton, which I still think is not realistic for making a living. That's roughly a half section of land, on average. But even a 40-ton minimum threshold takes several thousand voters off of the voter list.
So is kind of the push now for organizations and farmers that are about choice. Do you think their push now is really behind this changes to the voter eligibility instead of tackling the dual market or a single desk head on?
Oh, I don't know. I think that would be my feeling right now. I think that's probably one of our best hopes, but I'd like to work with the board and say, kind of move in that direction, because I believe, like, setting aside partisanship or sentimentality, I think if the board doesn't look at the trends, the way things are going, it's going to end. I think the end is inevitable for the Canadian Wheat Board if they don't look at the way trends are going. Like, even their own surveys show that the younger generation of farmers favor an open market. And so I think they need to take a good look at that and say, okay, if that's the way farmers want to go, we need to start maybe moving in that direction. But I really believe that a pool can still exist in an open market. We've seen that in Ontario, and Australia has modeled that as well. They won't have the volume that they do now, but there are still a number of farmers that I believe really want to maintain that. And I think it still could be effective.
What's interesting to me is that everybody kind of, we take on a lot of stuff from our parents. And so if you grew up in a house where it was very pro-single desk, you're probably likely to have those same sort of feelings. If you grew up in a household where your dad, complained about the single desk and the board and the pool, and you're likely to have that viewpoint as well. And I've always kind of wondered if we actually did do away with the single desk, some people would kind of sit there and wonder, now what do I do? I've been bitching about this for so long. Okay, this is interesting, and some people would struggle and some people would thrive. I just don't, for me personally, based on the political situation we have, that change is just not going to happen for good or bad.
Yeah, no, and I think you make a good point. For the most part, I think that's the way families are, that the younger generation takes on the viewpoints of the older generation. But I do know some exceptions where even some of our own relatives where the father still likes a single desk, but the son wants the open market. Mm-hmm. So we see some of that change coming.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I think you're right. That's, and not just in this regard, but in just general thinking and the way we're brought up, we tend to gravitate to the way we're trained and raised.
Is there any, you mentioned trends with some of the younger farmers, or some of the trends that are happening that you think are going to kind of be some of the undoing eventually for the board and some of its current mandates? What are some of those trends you're talking about?
Well, I see like bigger farms, fewer farms, but bigger ones. And so I see, a lot, and I don't consider ourselves a big farm. I'd say we're about middle of the road with my dad, my brother, and I. But, there's some really large, several 1,000-acre farms that I could foresee them having their own market guy on payroll. So that's all he does is marketing, sort of like what the grain companies do. Mm-hmm. But he would look after the marketing for that farm. That may be a ways down the road, but I could foresee that happening. And so a lot of even the farms now, they're wanting to take control of all of their marketing. They do it now for canola, lentils, oats, peas, all the non-board crops now, they look after that, and to add wheat and barley into that would not be, much of an adaptation.
Right. Okay, Kevin, well, thank you very much. As I'm sure this issue is not going away, we'll definitely talk to you again in the future, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks, Sean, and Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you too.
Thank you.